Hi, Mark.
So that's why I have Brian on, is because this is supposed to be a comedy channel. We're not really here to do any serious work. And even the serious work, we'd like to have a comedic tinge.
I'm ready.
You're ready. Okay. Well, Brian White is certainly the guy to bring that comedic tinge to this channel. So we're going to talk about today. The topic today is, what is a sedan? And you'll figure out what I'm talking about in just a minute. I think it's important to you to know what we're going to talk about today, but I've been wrong before once, except I found out that I was actually wrong about being wrong.
Quite the paradox.
Yes. Okay, so this is Randy Kirk. This is a place that you should like. This is the time to like it right now. When you like it right now, it tells me that you don't care what Brian says. You just kind of like watching him. So then subscribe, notify, because this is one of two videos this week for Brian. We're going to do one more. This is a Sunday morning as we're coming to you right now. There'll be one later in the week. You want to be notified when Brian's going to be on. Then you want to follow Brian everywhere. That would be on Twitter at
4K podcast.
Spell it.
4K podcast.
Okay, all right. I'll put that down in the information below, and then you follow your YouTube channel, which is My Tesla Weekend, right?
That's me.
Absolutely. Then join his Patreon. He's got so many more patrons than I do. So, but you can still do him first. All right. But then hit mine as well. Does that work for you?
I've been doing this 3 years. It shouldn't be too surprising that I've had more time to build up Patreon.
They just like you better.
Well, I mean, come on.
All right. So what is a sedan? Now, everybody that watches my channel knows I drive a Volvo 6. I can never remember the numbers. It's that sporty looking Volvo, the one that's got 300 horsepower and twin turbos and all that kind of stuff. It's a sports sedan. And I love sports sedans. I've almost always driven sports sedans. That's my preference. So I was shocked to find out that nobody loves sedans anymore. But you told somebody somewhere, and I overheard it, that sedans still sell. Even in the
sell. Even in the United States, yes, sir, they still sell. Now you can look at, because we talk so much about Tesla, obviously we're talking about the 3 Series and the 5 Series and the Mercedes and the BMW. No, my friend, we're talking about cars, just plain cars. The Corolla, the Civic, the Camry, the Accord. These are 4 of the best-selling cars in the world. And it's not just for rental fleets. It's not just for poor people. It's for everybody. You've known rich people who drove Honda Accords and Camrys. They're just plain good cars. They don't drive them necessarily because they're sedans. It's a size that makes sense. You've got 5 seats and a trunk. If you need more cargo space, sometimes the seat folds down and you get more cargo space. It's a good compromise between a ridiculously big car and a small car. And in other parts of the world, this may come as a surprise to you, Randy, but they weren't built from the ground up for the automotive world. They were built for horses and foot travel. Roads aren't huge worldwide. It's not like China where they tear down entire cities to rebuild them from scratch. Yes. They've got to make the cars fit. And a lot of times, the things that sell really well in the US, 20 years ago, the Suburban, 2-wheel drive Suburban, those were the hottest sellers. They were cheap to build, had a good margin, and they sold like hotcakes. Yeah. Internationally, you couldn't sell those. They're too big. So is the sedan dead? Only if you're Ford or GM, both of whom have really given up on it. Ford only makes one vehicle smaller than a crossover SUV, and that's the Mustang, of which they sell like 1,000 a week. Yeah, we sold a lot of Focus, we sold a lot of Fusion, we sold a lot of Taurus and Crown Vics, but the economy on the bigger ones, the Crown Vics, we couldn't get away with it. And the smaller ones, there's just no margin there. And it's like, I get it, but somebody is going to make it. And if your objective is brand loyalty, get them in on a car they can afford so they'll like you, for crying out loud. That was the death of Taco Bell. They were a 24-hour place. They didn't make money overnight, but they kept the customers loyal. And once it's 3 a.m. and you're like, oh, Taco Bell's close. I guess I'll go to Jack in the Box. You go back to Jack in the Box during the day. And Taco Bell found this knock-on effect where sales continued to fall. So the sedans are still alive, and they come in different sizes.
And they're mostly Japanese.
And they are large Asian. I'd say Asian because Hyundai still makes them too. Yes. So let's talk about, I've got this absolute, how do you feel about clowns? Because this one isn't scary. He's just silly. This clown who keeps showing up in my comments saying Tesla will never catch on because people want a big car, not some compact 4-seater. So first of all, Tesla doesn't make any 4-seaters.
Right.
They make a 5-seater. The Roadster might be a 4-seat configuration. I think 5 would be a stretch. I think 2 would be more comfortable. But the Supra was a 4-seater if your passengers have no legs. The X comes in 5. I think now it only comes in 6 or 7-seat, but at one point you could get it in 5-seat configurations.
Right.
There's no such thing as a 4-seat Tesla. And to say it's too small is bonkers because the Model 3 is at smallest a mid-size sedan. It's really quite big. Mm-hmm. So have you ever rented a car in a foreign country outside of North America?
Yes, but it's been a very long time ago.
So what we call a compact, they would call a mid-size sedan, really. So there's your A-Class, which is the subcompact, like a Yaris, or smaller, like something where it's got 4, maybe 5 seat belts. But if you're using the back seat, there is no cargo capacity behind it. Then you've got the small cars, which would be like a Civic. Then you've got medium cars, your C-Class, which is going to be like a Model 3. And then you go to large cars, which would be like not quite the Model S yet, but more like some just slightly bigger than a Camry. I'm trying to think of what that would be. Lincoln MKX would probably be a good example, or MKZ, whichever one is the sedan. Then you get to executive cars, which is like the Mercedes, the Teslas, and maybe the Lincoln. If you're feeling charitable, if you're a rental car company, you might call that an executive car. And then you get into your SUVs, vans, and multi-purpose vehicles. All of those classes sell. If having a Model 3 would compete with a compact, that is like saying the Camry competes with the Corolla. I would disagree. The Accord competes with the Civic. I would disagree. These are different cars in different prices at different weights with different efficiencies. They're different cars. And if you've got a kid or 2, a Civic might work for you. If you've got 3, you'd really rather step up to an Accord. So that's where, and the future of sedans is uncertain. I mean, if you want to lead, Mary, you might want to wise up to that.
So then a Model 3 in this new configuration with this new, the
Highland,
we don't really know. We assume it's going to be about the same size, at least. It may have a very different look or not. We'll talk about my theory in a minute and see what you think of my theory. Maybe I've already told you about my theory. Anyway, but that the Model 3 then would be still too large for Europe. I mean, they're selling.
Yes.
They're selling.
They sell like gangbusters, but in Europe, that's considered a pretty large car. You'll notice the S never really sold well in Europe, and the roads they're just smaller. Newer roads are bigger, but that only helps you when you get to your neighborhood, and now you got to maneuver around. Right. So that the 3 will still sell well, but to really get into that market, you need something that is cheaper and is smaller.
Okay, and then what about China and the what do you want to call it, the China distribution center shipping to all the other ports?
Absolutely. So is the question about the Highland?
Do we look at the Highland once the Highland comes around and is better than the current version, newer? Do you expect sales to go up in China and some of the other export locations?
Well, I would say the Model 3 Highland will sell with renewed vigor because it will be on the outside largely the same car, a little sportier, a little fancier, a little more up to date. The current design is more of a happy car. The leaks we've seen make this look like an aggressive car, and a lot of people like that. You look at the sedans that people aspire to; they all have aggressive looks. There's very few of the happy ones. There was I don't remember if it was an S500, but there was a Mercedes that had big googly eyes for a while, and that didn't sell very well because in that price range, that's not what people were necessarily looking for. Even if it was just a visual refresh, it would boost sales.
I got you.
But we have reason to believe it will be more than that. And according to my interview with Corey Steuben from Monroe and Associates, it will bring down the cost to manufacture, which will allow them more margin and or pricing flexibility. But really, if you could drop even another couple thousand here and there, you're going to spur demand radically. We've looked at it before with the addressable market and how much it accelerates as you get down lower and lower, and how much more sales there are.
Right.
And in many markets, the Model 3 is already a better deal than a gasoline equivalent.
Yeah.
Now let's take another couple thousand off it. It's going to be a big seller, is my belief.
So I never really thought about that differentiation between the aggressive car, I call a sports car, and the happy car, which you would call maybe, without being sexist, a mom car. Is there any reason to believe that the people that kind of prefer the happy car will be interested in a more aggressive look, or would they now be falling back on the Honda?
I don't think so, but that's a market question I've never really looked at.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So I'll tell you my theory. I don't know if I've expressed this to you before, but you're probably one of the best people to tell it to. I have a theory that the Model 3 Highland in Shanghai will be a hatchback, and the Model 3 Highland in the United States will not.
It's not impossible. Let me think a second.
So now we have a separate design center in Shanghai for what, 4 years maybe, that they built specifically to take advantage of the concept that you would have different markets that would have different interests in the design and the look of the car. Well, if you're going to redesign the car, why not hit it with the marketplace?
Sure. So I can address that.
Okay.
One is making a car a hatchback is more involved than just putting a canopy on it like you would with a truck. But there would be engineering challenges. It's not just a platform difference, it's a whole car difference at that point. So then, but the other reason I would say that's unlikely is because there has been footage of it from a tremendous distance shot with a drone in Shanghai, where we see what we believe is the Model 3 Highland. And we believe that because it's next to the building that we believe is the design studio in a security fenced off area, one of those no visibility fence areas, driving around in that area with a cover on the front hood and bumper. That tells me exactly what they're trying to hide. And it was not a hatchback.
Got it. Okay.
So
you think it'll be the same car in both markets?
I do believe it will be the same car in both markets. I think there will be a time when they use a single platform to make multiple vehicles. And I think that time is with the compact model. I think that would be perfect to let each design center show what they've got for their market. I would love to see the compact as maybe a sedan in Mexico, maybe a hatchback in Europe, maybe a city car in China. Sky's the limit, baby. And it would be an interesting challenge. And then, of course, you could export them. They're all going to pass safety.
Right.
Yeah, because send them back and forth. If you want the European one, it's no longer 25 because we had to import it. Right. It's 45, right. Huge margin. And you would still sell them by the cajillions because now they're super, super rare. And it would be pretty magical, I think.
So then what is what do you think about timing? I'm hearing here, there, and everywhere that maybe Shanghai will start shipping a couple of months ahead of California.
I don't think they are capable of shipping a couple months ahead because it would potentially crush the demand in the US.
Mm-hmm.
The way to save that is when the new model comes out, you price it significantly higher at launch,
right,
so that people could say, well, I really do like the looks of the new one, but for $10,000 less, I'll take the existing one.
Right.
But I think their objective is to do a simultaneous launch to prevent that issue arising at all.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of timing, I think we talked before, the parts are not being shipped yet in production level numbers to the US factory in Fremont. So that means we're still a couple months out. Mm-hmm. And production of Model 3 appears to remain quite strong at the end of this quarter. So my theory that they had taken the line down appears, at least in large part, not to be the case. But we'll find out. Let's see. This is going out Sunday. We'll find out today. Ooh, I wonder how I did.
Shortly after we find out whether you're right or wrong. I'm sorry, both of us, because I've got my number. Everybody knows my number is 460. And your number is
489 and change. 489, 273 maybe.
And that's production.
And that's production. I don't generally track deliveries because my metrics are production based. I follow the factories. Nobody outside the company. There ain't a person who isn't under a non-disclosure agreement who knows more about what's going on in those factories than me. You might find someone who knows more about a factory, but not all of them. And that's what I'm very, very good at. Yeah. But when it comes to deliveries, there's a lot of metrics, and I've tried tracking them, and it ends up just being tea leaves. And my numbers end up no better or different than anybody else's. So I'm just going to say 469, 420. Nice.
All right. So by the way, my old number for production was 490. So we were, really on the same plane. And I have to admit, I've only lowered my number because of Troy.
Oh.
Because, he just kept on hammering his low number. And I'm like, okay, Troy. And I don't have more information than he does. But maybe I should, now that I'm talking to you, maybe I should up my number back to 490 on production.
Well, if you're just, I can't. I'd love to say that I'm going to be the most accurate. That is always my objective. Sometimes I am the most accurate, but sometimes I am not. Troy's numbers tend to change quite substantially over the course of a quarter, where he'll start at one extreme and migrate back towards the pack as the days count down. And I've reached out to him to see if he could do an interview, but I don't believe he does interviews. No. And I offered to share some of my secret sauce, and he was not interested. So,
are you thinking there will be any intentional slowing down compared to maximum capacity over the second half of the year based on lack of demand?
Absolutely not, because they still have the margin to play with. And even if they were at a point where it's like, well, we really can't cut the price anymore, just by increasing deliveries, increasing production will get you better prices on your parts. Texas and Berlin have their second and third lines in. They're being configured as we speak. Although technically, I guess we're speaking on a holiday Sunday, so maybe not right now, but they have been both directions of today. So they will be increasing production on both of those. They will be tripling. So even if they didn't have the margin to work with, which they do, they would have increased economies of scale, which would create that margin to work with, which they need, because they will have to continue adjusting prices as the year goes on to make the best-selling car in the world sell even more cars.
Yes, right. Yes, indeed. Any thoughts of what would happen if this conversation turns out to be prescient and the Model 3 now is looking like it needs, it's going to sell a couple 100,000. I mean, could potentially sell a couple 300,000 more than current production capacity. What would they do?
How would they build them?
Yes.
Where would they build them?
Yes.
So I think Shanghai is overdue for a line upgrade, but I don't know if they would want to take the line all the way down to do it. Fremont can't really squeeze out a whole lot more units, but I believe that what they would do is the opposite. They would have a car that's cheaper to build with so much demand that the margin would bump back to 30, 40%. And they would just make a fortune selling as absolutely many as they can. And it would still be among the best selling cars in the world, even without adding new lines and new factories.
So that seems like a good 6-month plan. But what about if it's really going to be a serious seller long term? Any thought of maybe Berlin getting back in the game, and maybe with a slightly different configuration?
Yes, 100% yes. I don't know about the different configuration, but 100% yes. We know Berlin is aiming to expand. I believe that they would be expanding with a line for compact, but you know how Tesla is. It's like that line from Contact. Why build one of something when you can build two for twice the price? They could very easily say, when we break ground, we're breaking ground on a compact and Model 3 lines at the same time. And I just think that they would hold off because they'd want to get the unboxed production method dialed in and then make an even more efficient version of the Model 3 based on that. But it's tough to say.
Well, Brian, this is exactly what I wanted to do today because, I am a sedan guy. And I know I've said over and over again that I'm not going to buy a Model 3, even though it would be the car of choice, because I only drive about 100, 200 miles a month, which makes it doesn't make a lot of sense to go out and buy another car when you're only driving that many miles. So, however, we do have the Cybertruck on deposit. But that's 2 or 3 years from now. Who knows what people will be doing when my number finally comes up. But I do like just the look of some cars. Like for me, it's always been the Challenger. So I'm looking for the new, really cool looking car. And maybe that'll be this Model 3.
Maybe. Looking forward to finding out for sure.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on again today and taking time off of, I think you're spending time with family and friends right now, if I'm not incorrect. And we're just always glad to have you on. And follow him everywhere he goes, even to his family and friends weekend right now. Follow him over there. I'm at the big 4th of July event, all the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Longview, Washington. If you're in Longview, Washington, see if you can figure out a way to get in touch with me. I'd love to say hello. There you go. See, I tell you, follow him everywhere. Follow him on YouTube, follow him on Twitter, follow him on Patreon, and then follow me all those places too. And then hit like, subscribe. And then I think that's all we got, Brian. I think it is. Thank you so much for your time, Randy. I enjoyed hanging out with you. Me too. Hanging out with you as well. And thank you guys. It's been great talking to you.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.